In this episode, I speak with Travis Schultz, the nationally recognised founder and managing partner of Travis Schultz and Partners, a compensation law firm known for its ethical, client-centric approach, unparalleled specialist expertise, and deep commitment to community and philanthropy. I've worked with Trav and his team for many years now, producing marketing content and capturing his community and charity events, but I've never had the opportunity to just sit down with him and find out what makes him tick. You'll hear about the sacrifices he made, the invaluable lessons learned, and how his time at Harvard inspired the unique values-aligned model for his firm. Travis's candid reflections on leadership, resilience, and the true meaning of success offer powerful takeaways for anyone navigating the challenges of business and life. Let's get into it.
Trav,
Tom,
what was one of the most difficult moments of your life that, in hindsight, turned out to be a blessing?
oh, look, probably from a business perspective, making decisions around the firm and the partnership, and having to tell a partner that the consensus of the organisation was that they couldn't continue to participate in equity and that they really needed to reconsider their future. Awful discussion to have, particularly when I was very young and in my early career, having to have those conversations with a far more senior, experienced lawyer partner. But being managing partner, having that responsibility, and it's probably one of the most difficult discussions I've had to have, more than once. But in hindsight, you look back and you go, it had to be done.
There's a couple of themes there in regards to making the right decision, even though it's a hard one. Does it get easier over time? I imagine you must have had to make a lot of decisions, some more difficult than others. Does it get easier with time? Do you get more comfortable with it, or is it always a bit jarring for you?
You're never going to be comfortable with making difficult decisions where there's impact on humans. We all feel many of us are empaths, and it is more difficult for people who feel that way to be clinical about a decision that is going to impact on someone else in a way that's not going to be pleasant for them. So no, it's never easy, but I think it's fair to say that over time you become more at peace that this is for the greater good, and it's going to hurt, but it's going to be better for everyone in the long term if you just rip that Band-Aid off and have that difficult discussion.
And what are the underlying values that you have in those discussions? Do you try and stick to something, whether it be just honesty, blatant honesty in the conversation? Do you comfort them? Do you support them? Or you just tell the truth, just lay it down for people?
Look, you need to be empathetic, but resist the urge to be sympathetic, in the sense that you need to be understanding of the impact on them. You need to do what you can to lessen the blow, but at the same time, you simply have to be honest, you have to be open, you have to be transparent, and you just can't bullshit them in that moment. The message is the message is the message. And sometimes you've got to deliver it. Sure, you do it in a way which has the edges rounded off to the extent that you can do that. And you do it in a way which is respectful, which is diplomatic, which is empathetic. But you can't allow yourself, if you're in that leadership role, you can't allow yourself to shirk a responsibility. No, you just have to stick to the script. You have to give them time, do it face to face, and listen. Let them be heard. But at the same time, you have to come back to the message that you are there to deliver in an open way, in a transparent way, and with honesty.
And how, you can or you don't have to speak about that person specifically you're talking about who was left out of the equity of that firm and that difficult conversation, but over all of the difficult conversations throughout your career, how do you find that they take it? Do some actually appreciate the honesty? I imagine some people might go the other way and not want to know about you. How do people sort of take it?
Look, it depends on what that decision is. But in the context of what we're talking about, it's very personal. It is damaging to their ego and their persona if they have not been able to meet the expectations of the role. Sure, everyone can understand data and metrics, and everyone can see that against measurable metrics, whether someone is or is not performing. But it doesn't change the fact that people are human, and we have a need to feel good about ourselves. We all want to succeed in our own way, and to be bluntly told, really sorry, but despite our discussions, you still aren't achieving what is expected of you. It's not something that people take very well most of the time, and so yeah, it is jarring. And some people will resent the conversation. I guess it's a case of shooting the messenger sometimes. But if you do it in a way where you let them understand why the decision has had to be made, give them some perspective, and be open, honest, and answer their questions, it can really help them to move on. But the reality, Tom, is that, in life, the villain is the hero of their own story.
Let's rewind. Travis, childhood, you as a young Travis running around northern Queensland. Tell me about where you grew up, mum and dad, and what life was like in the early years.
Look, I was the son of two teachers, middle child, born in Darwin. My teachers were, my parents were teaching the Indigenous up in the Northern Territory, in the Gulf of Carpentaria, Groote Island. And when Mum went into labour prematurely, the only way to get to a hospital was to get on board a fruit and vegetable plane that was leaving the island and head back towards Darwin. Now, my birth certificate says I was born in Darwin. We weren't there for long. After that, they were only up there on a contract and moved back to the Darling Downs, just outside of Toowoomba, a place called Hodsonvale. So my very early childhood years were spent really in Toowoomba. They were my first memories as a child. Old man got a transfer to Emerald in central Queensland, and then from there got to Caloundra. And I've been on the Sunshine Coast ever since. That was December 1980. So it won't be long, I'll be a local, Tom.
Let's back up. Sorry. Your mum was in early labour on a plane. Like, I've heard of stories where people are in cars rushing to the hospital, but she was on a plane rushing to the hospital.
Yes. Look.
Have you heard much about that story since?
Oh, look, there's all sorts of variations of it. But yeah, it was unexpected. And, up in those days, up in the Gulf of Carpentaria, the transport wasn't quite what it is now. And so there were planes that would go in with food and supplies and they'd have to go out. And they didn't have any airlines that were servicing it in the way that they might now with Rex and some of these regional providers. But look, I guess they did what they had to do. My mum had to get on a plane and get to a hospital, and that was the only way out.
Your relationship with your mum sounds like a pretty special one. Tell me a bit about her and that connection that you two have.
Oh, look, Mum's still alive and kicking and doing very well for a lady her age. She's certainly someone I admire.
How old is she, if you don't mind me asking?
She was born in 1946, so I'd have to do the maths from there.
Right up there.
Yeah, she was born in April 1946. So I admire her for her grit and resilience, the sacrifice that I saw her making throughout my childhood. To the point of we did it tough. We were no better than very middle. We were never flush with cash in the household, and Mum had to scrimp and save. And I just remember her making her own clothes, everything we had was homemade because you could save $1 or $2 back then. I think it might be different these days. I suspect that homemade probably costs more, but back then, if you wanted to buy a packet of iced Vovos, that was expensive. You could make some Anzacs at home for half the cost, and that was really what my mum would do. And she went without to try and give us kids as much, as she possibly could.
Your parents were both teachers. Did education play a role? Were they focusing on that, or were they sort of surviving in a sense of making sure there was food on the table? And
we had there's three of us: older sister, younger brother, and I think I was very much left alone. I don't recall my mother or father ever really checking in on me with homework and assignments. I think it was just expected that you would just do it. My younger brother might have been a different story, but they never really focused terribly on the education. They focused on the opportunity, and I was given the opportunity because my father was teaching in a Lutheran school. They got discounts, so I was able to go to Emmanuel in the very, very early days of Emmanuel here on the Sunshine Coast, because I got heavy discounts as a teacher through the Lutheran system then. And so I was given that opportunity to go to what was a private school. Back then it wasn't what it is now. It was a rather primitive private school. There was only, my sister was ahead of me, and she was the very first cohort of year 8. So I was the third class ever to go through. So they didn't have much. It was pretty basic back then, but certainly they're much better resourced now.
what were you like in the classroom? Were you the class clown or the teacher's pet?
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say that I was one of the more diligent ones in the class. I was a bit of a people pleaser, and I wanted to do the right thing. And so, yeah, definitely more the teacher's pet than the class clown, Tom.
And you've said that even back then, maybe it was high school, that you felt this sense to make a difference in the world. I know I'm not sure if I was mature enough to sort of be thinking that wide and that large, but did you have, is that true? Did you have that sort of sense to do something impactful, or?
Yeah, I had a misguided sense back then, I suspect, Tom. I knew that I wanted to do more and do better. I was never really, satisfied with what I perceived as mediocrity. I just wanted to just achieve more and do more. And I had this vision as a teenager that a way that I could have some positive impact would be in politics. And I thought that's a really good way to go and change the world and make a positive difference and feel good about myself for having been a good citizen and made change. Probably naive at the time to think that was the way to do it. But anyway, I never did get into politics.
Would you?
No.
You wouldn't?
No, that ship has sailed, Tom. I think if really the only politics I would ever be interested in would be federal politics, and I think you really need to start a federal career when you are, about late 30s to 40, to give yourself time to really, if you want to make a difference, you want to be in cabinet, and yeah, you just need time to get there. And I'm past 40 now by some way, Tom. So I think that ship has sailed.
All right, a quick word from one of our sponsors, and then we'll get right back to the show. Today's sponsor is, it's me, Tom from Raw Lens. At Raw Lens, we create impactful video and stills content that captivates your community. If you're a business, organization, or individual with a message to share, then let's chat. Book your free Creative Spark session today at rawlensmedia.com. Let's bring your vision to life. Okay, back to me in the show.
So out of school, university, was that an option? Or how did you stumble across law? How did you land at law, and how did you make that pathway into that career?
Look, it was quite accidental, but inevitable. As I said before, we were lower middle. My older sister had been sent to university. She was studying arts, a BA, Bachelor of Attendance, as we used to call it. And she was staying on campus at UQ and being supported by my parents. She had to do some part-time work. My younger brother was just starting into high school, and it was not financially possible for me to be sent away to go to university as well. I had been given an opportunity with a local law firm to work there. I'd done work experience in year 10 at a law firm, and they kept asking me back to work there on school holidays and be paid to work there over Christmas school holidays. And I guess I'd been pushed in that direction because at school there was a perception that I was a good public speaker. And they just said, well, if you lead the debating team and if you're a good speaker, that we think law could be for you, because if you were seen as a good orator and the third speaker on your debating team, that's the career for you. And so it was just a push that way. I didn't really know. But there was an opportunity for me to do law externally. While I'm working full-time, you could do what was called articles of clerkship back then. It's not available now, where you were indentured to a practitioner. It was registered with the Supreme Court, and you had to do that for 5 years and study for 6. And then if you got through, you could then become admitted as a lawyer. And for me, it was an opportunity to put myself through. It would mean I could have that tertiary education, and it was the start of a career. Was it easy? No. My starting wage was $165 a week. You couldn't buy textbooks and pay your student union fees and pay your costs of doing university out of $165 a week, not even then. So I ended up having to do extra jobs as well. I would referee soccer on weekends because they paid pretty well for the seniors. And I started up a little process serving business as well, where you served legal documents to try and make a little bit, and got through that way. And it wasn't easy. You would have to work full-time, sometimes long hours full-time in a law firm, and then study, at night as late as you needed to study, and then on weekends. But I got through. And look, I think it's probably the best thing I ever did. It was hard. The attrition rate was very, very high. Not many made it through because it just wasn't easy. But what you learned was invaluable. And it wasn't just the fact that you're learning law and applying it day to day. It was the other lessons that you had to learn to get through. You had to learn to be resilient. You had to learn to find efficiencies. You had to understand the importance of prioritizing. What really matters here? Because I can't do everything. What's the highest priority? Where can I create the most value in all of these things that I had to do? And then, just make it work. And you had to make it work, Tom.
It was a jarring, a difficult transition going from school where you're in the debate team. I'm sure that's where your passion for law and speaking and all those things it's the sort of place where you want it to shine through and explore and have fun with. And then all of a sudden you go to working at a law firm, but was it as you expected? I'm sure you went straight up onto speaking and debating. Were you doing other tasks at the time?
Well, just to be clear, Tom, I didn't like having to do the debating and the public speaking and all of the stuff I was thrown into. I just wanted to play sport. I was more focused on getting out into the paddock than being stuck in the library.
But people thought you were good at it. So it was something you were good at, but you didn't necessarily. You were more thinking about the soccer field, or
I was probably better at cricket. I was captain of the school cricket team, and that was probably my thing. More so than soccer and touch footy and some rugby. I was a bit of a skinny kid, so my rugby career was at fullback until I got smashed by the big kids, and maybe I'll just stick to touch. I was a bit of a skinny rake back then, but it was a difficult transition in the sense that things had to give, and you realise when you go away from that school environment into that, you're working, you're studying, you don't have time, and I had to give away my cricket. I gave away my soccer. I managed to play touch at night, one night a week. It's my thing, but touch was good because it was only an hour and it was over and done with. And used to look forward to those Wednesday nights. But I had to eventually give away playing tennis. I'd played a lot of tennis, and the time it took was just too much. So gave that away as well. But just sacrifices you had to make to fit everything in. And
it sounds like you had to really earn it. You really had to pave your own way. Do you feel like it's, you spoke about resilience, has that held you in good stead all these years later? And I guess my follow-up to that is, and it sort of relates to parenting, there's these two ideas, and there's this urge to nurture your children and provide everything, but then sometimes people just learn the hard way. Where do you sit on that?
Oh, look, I think we all have to learn, and we have to learn the hard way. When it comes to parenting, I haven't been particularly good. We've only got one child, and I guess, when you're a parent of one child, you don't have a spare. And so you're probably a little bit naturally overprotective. And so I think I probably haven't practiced what I've preached there very well, in that have probably been a little too overprotective at times, and, a little too accommodating and enabling. I do agree, though, that, we learn life through experiences, and if you've never had to overcome adversity, you will never develop the grit, resilience, and coping mechanisms that will enable you to survive in the real world. And I think we do need to let our kids fail from time to time. As a parent, it's difficult to watch. It can be painful to watch. But I do think that it is necessary for us as humans to learn from adversity, but more importantly, give ourselves, give our kids, give our teams the space to make mistakes. Give them the opportunity to make those decisions, and let them realise that may not have been the right one. I always say to my team that very happy for you to make mistakes, but please try and avoid making the same one twice.
You had a mentor in the early days. What did he teach you specifically? You sound like you're still really close to today. Did he shape you in some ways?
Look, I was really lucky. That was one of the real blessings in my career, was that I stumbled across a mentor who I could never have known when I started working with him, that he was on the pathway to becoming the rock star leader in his field. He was 15 years older than me. He was a barrister who I began working for when I'm still a kid. I'm doing my articles of clerkship. I'm 18, 19 years of age when I first met him, Michael. And he was a barrister in Brisbane, and he practiced in this field of compensation law, and I worked a lot with him, and I learned a lot from him. Not just about the law. He was a tremendous advocate, a fantastic speaker. He had a sharp mind, a sharp wit. He was diligent, hardworking, ethical. He just embodied all of those values that you would want, in a leader in law. And he went on to become a King's Counsel, and continue to work with him very, very closely. And we just became mates, very close mates. And he really shaped me.
He gave you, busy man, successful man. Why did he take the time to spend time? He probably didn't have to, but why did he spend time with you and develop you?
Look, I think, he's a generous soul, very generous soul, very giving. But he and I also clicked. I think we had a lot in common, and he's retired now, but we still catch up every Saturday on the phone, and we still talk about the horses, and we go to lunch and do all those things. He's the godfather of my son. So I was really lucky to have a mentor, someone who just came along, who was reliable, and who was just an absolute leader, and he was the leader in our field in Queensland. So to have access to that, it's a rarity. Not everyone has that good fortune, I guess, to just stumble across a mentor who is not only the best in their field, but someone who takes an interest in you and is prepared to give their time, their wisdom, and their energy.
Mm. You've had businesses in the past. You've sold businesses in the past. What's it like selling a business and then waking up the next day and looking into the future? Is it a nice feeling? Was it a daunting feeling to sell a business and then land in that world at a relatively young age? How did that feel?
Oh, look, it's difficult. Anyone who has built something over time and over many years, it's personal to you. It's almost family. It's just very difficult to make that decision, just to sell it to someone else, let alone a corporation. But you're talking about that previous practice I had, Schultz, Timmy O'Brien. Look, it was hard. What it was meant to be in terms of that transaction and the opportunities that would come, it didn't pan out the way it was meant to. I probably best not go into too much about that, other than to say that, look, that was something that I have deep regrets about. I wish I could change the outcome of that. The organisation that bought my practice had some self-inflicted woes within a year or so of buying the former firm, and that had an impact on them significantly, but that meant our team as well. So I have deep regrets about that, and I wish I'd had a crystal ball. But at the time, look, it was a decision that was made for a range of very good reasons. It was meant to play out a way that would have had opportunities for the team. It didn't play out quite that way, sadly. But look, you can't change the past. I'll certainly learn from that experience, Tom.
Yeah. And I guess you did go into a life of learning after that and self-development. You went to Harvard in Boston. What did you learn there, and why did you go there?
Look, I had, after that transaction, I had to serve a non-compete, and I did some consultancy work for firms, and I decided that, leaders are lifelong learners, and I just wanted to be better. And I spent a lot of time doing short courses and learning, and I then went and did a program at Harvard on leading professional services firms. And through this consultancy work and the education and everything I've been doing, I just had some great ideas. And, in the past, before that, I was so busy working in the business, I just hadn't been able to work on it to the extent I wanted to. And I'd been so time poor, and suddenly having time to think deeply, strategically, and with purpose. I had these ideas and I just wanted to test them out. And I thought, maybe just for shits and giggles, maybe I could try setting up a little professional services firm where I can see a gap in the market and just see if I can do that in a values-aligned way. I reckon it could work.
And that became the Travis Schultz and Partners model eventually.
Yeah, so the gap I identified was that at the time in our sector, it was very corporate dominated, very focused on process, you might say sausage machine-y kind of style, high fee structure, not so focused on, not client-centric, it was more business-centric. And I hated having business in a professional services firm. I just hated that. To me, you're a professional services firm because you're a profession. And I struggle with this concept of these bean counters and accountants coming into professional services firms and saying, hey, we can make you more profitable if you just charge more and do this. To me, that was, yes, it's necessary that you've got to be cash flow positive, but I just wanted to be a professional services firm. Everyone says they're client-centric, but demonstrate it. Prove it. Prove it through your actions. Actions speak so much louder than words. So my idea was that I couldn't afford to advertise and compete with the big players. That was fine. I thought if we just have a focus on genuine industry-leading expertise, just because I was always the nerd, right? So I already had that tag as being a nerd and you just love the law and really being that nerdy guy. Industry-leading expertise, but a lower fee structure, significantly lower, so that you're really just creating a value proposition that's just irresistible. Because, I mean, if you can have industry-leading expertise but pay 30, 40% less, why would you go anywhere else? And I thought, I reckon we can make this work. We got to keep our costs low. Can't really advertise like any of the big players. We're going to have to be on the tools, but I reckon this can work. And we can make a little law firm out of this. And I had a space at my little bar, and I thought we could have, 6, 7 or 8 people and have a happy little existence and just focusing on expertise, lower fee structure, being values driven, committed to community, just engage with community, give back, do all the things that make you feel good. And I reckon we'll get enough support through doing that to make a little law firm work.
Yeah. Who's Jack O'Brien and why is he special to you?
So Jack O'Brien is my mother's father. And I guess he's special to me because the persona that I've developed of him is one I really admire. As a kid, I was intrigued by his logbooks and some of the other remaining bits of his wartime service. He was with Bomber Command. He flew under Winston Churchill's command, bombing Nazi Germany during World War II. And this logbook, it's starting to fall apart a little bit, but it has every flight from his training days, and he was a shithead, I could see at times, to when he was actually in war and flying these missions. And it intrigued me as a kid. And I dug into it. I realised that in Bomber Command, about 44.1% of those who flew died. And then a further 8,000 were injured. Another 6,000 became prisoners of war. So more than half of their number were either killed, captured, or wounded. And in Bomber Command, the rule was that if you could fly 30 sorties, your time was done. You'd earned your leave and you could go. The average pilot, which he was, survived 11. On average, they'd get through 11 before they were dead. Jack O'Brien didn't fly 30, he flew 37. And I could never understand why this bloke who had earned his leave pass would keep flying in the face of adversity. And to me, there was a piece there about grit, resilience, purpose, and meaning. It was dedication to duty, and I admired that. And so I guess to me, when we started TSP, the firm, the colours, the purple and champagne, they are the colours from the ribbon of the Distinguished Flying Cross. He won a Distinguished Flying Cross for his bravery in bombing Nazi Germany in nighttime raids. And I still have that medal at home in my safe. And to me, it was really, I guess, a nod to him and all that he stood for to, with our current firm, to have that link to Jack. And that's why we have the colours that we have. It's dedication to duty, it's bravery, it's grit, and it's real meaning.
I think this is around about the time we first met. You were just starting out. You maybe had 3, 4, 5 staff. And one thing I noticed is that the brand was strong and you were so clear on what you wanted to do. All the things you've just said was very clear. And we did testimonial videos, I don't know if you remember, with some of your early clients, but they spoke so authentically about what you did for them and the care and the heart and the way it was set up. It was client-centric. And you sort of speak as if it's a little bit of an experiment after Harvard. Like, how would this new way of doing business go? How did it go?
Look, I made a lot of mistakes. One of the mistakes I made was misjudgment. I thought that this gap that I could see in the market would be big enough to support, 6, 7, 8 people in this little firm, and that we'd be able to sustain those people and their families, and it'd be a comfortable little existence. But here we are 7 years on, and we're 70 plus staff across Queensland with offices in Cairns, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast. I think we are the biggest compensation law firm in Queensland now. That's Queensland only. I think it's only the firms that have interstate offices as well that would perhaps have a bigger core personal injuries practice than ours. So I completely got it wrong, Tom, where I thought that the demand for this little model of industry-leading expertise, values-led, lower fee structure, community-focused, I thought the gap was just this big. But it was, as it turns out, it was exponentially bigger.
Was there a moment that you go, oh, this is it, this is working, or it's just been year-on-year growth and you're just like, yeah, this works?
Look, my CEO, Kelly, who I've worked with for many years, was always frustrated with me. She'd say, look, how big is this going to get? 1 year in, how big is this going to get? Like, we're taking more space, we're having to move buildings around, take more space, new offices. And I kept saying to her that market forces will dictate our position.
Mm.
And a year later, how big is this going to get? Market forces will dictate our position.
Do you still feel the same way?
Look, it's true. Market forces will dictate how big we get to. We've had to take a deliberate decision to try and constrain the growth. The growth got away from us because we were just putting people on and trying to onboard them and immerse them in our culture and values and let them understand what our philosophy is and our principles, what we stand for. And it was getting away from it. So we had to slow it and get systems and processes, and we had to obviously immerse people in it. And it's been hard culturally to make sure that when you're bringing in so many new people that everyone, I guess, learns by osmosis, what you stand for. Because we want people who align to our vision and values and purpose.
All right, a quick word from one of our sponsors, and then we'll get right back to the show. Today's sponsor is, it's me, Tom from Raw Lens. At Raw Lens, we create impactful video and stills content that captivates your community. If you're a business, organization, or individual with a message to share, then let's chat. Book your free Creative Spark session today at rawlensmedia.com. Let's bring your vision to life. Okay, back to me in the show.
What would you say is the most important thing? Maybe it is just that to business owners out there around the mechanics of running a business and growing a business like you have so successfully. What would be the one or two things you would say to them? Get this right, and you'll grow. You'll do well.
Look, if I had to distill it all down, Tom, I'd say that first of all, you need to identify your point of difference. What is your unique value proposition? How can you distinguish yourself from your competitors in your sector, whatever that might be? And think deeply about that, and then test it, and then develop your strategy for delivery. So, all right, this is my idea. How am I going to promote this, market this, get this into the marketplace? And then have a deliberate plan to manage it if it works. What I failed to do was to have a contingency plan for, well, what if this isn't just 7 or 8 people? What if this is, I need 10 or 20 or 30 or 70? I had no plan for that. I was flying by the seat of my pants. And thank God I had Kel there with me to help, and a great team, people like Amy, who I'd worked with as well, great team of people who I'd worked with before. We managed to get by, and we've patched things up, and it's pretty good now. We're much better structured. But yeah, that was a mistake, not having that contingency plan for unexpected growth.
You have to make so many decisions, and you're saying you're flying by the seat of your pants with some of those, but do you have a process around making decisions when you have so many to make? You run a business, 70 odd. You run a lot of events for charities across the coast. How do you make all these decisions so quickly and get them right?
Well, you don't. You don't always get them right. Look, as an approach to decision making, you want to be data led to the extent you can. So you want evidence to support that decision. If you've got it, use your historical data. Trends are your friend. Look at any of that available material. Test it if you need to. Get a second opinion. Talk to someone that you understands and you trust, and then make the best decision that you can make. What you can't do is have analysis paralysis, because that will kill you as an organisation. And I've seen it. I've seen firms, law firms I've helped as a mentor, where they just can't make a decision, and they overanalyze and they cogitate and they ruminate, and no decision is made and nothing moves forward. So I think, Tom, at the end of the day, make the best decision you can, data-driven, evidence-led, accept that you may not always get them right, but just make a decision, because making no decision is far worse than making the wrong decision.
Amen. When you're hiring people, what are you looking for? And what is the difference between confidence and arrogance and ego in your business, do you think?
Well, first of all, dealing with the type of people, because of what we stand for being, our niche is just industry-leading expertise, fairness, community engagement. That's our piece. So because of what we stand for, that attracts a lot of people who also align to that. So we've sort of found that recruiting professional staff particularly, we find that they come to us more often than us putting it out there that there's a role available. And we are looking for people who firstly align to what we stand for, because that's key. You're going to deliver on your mission. That's key. But when it comes to particularly young lawyers and professionals, no, for us, it is always attitude over aptitude. We don't want the person who got the highest GPA at university. If they happen to have great marks, bonus. We want the right attitude. We want someone who is going to align, who's going to be a cultural fit, who is a giver, not a taker, who really wants to deliver for their clients, the clients at the firm, and who has a commitment to self and professional development, who wants to be a better person every day, a better lawyer every day. They're the people we want. I don't care if they only got a GPA of 4.1. If they've got the right attitude and they tick all of those boxes, then they're the ones for us. Sure, there's a threshold level of smarts that you need, but if you're going to get through a tertiary education, you should have that threshold level of smarts.
And confidence, important in your line of work, but probably everywhere. But how do you develop that, and what is the difference between that and just having an ego?
Yeah, important. Confidence, I think, is a good thing, and it's a necessary thing. Arrogance can be problematic. Narcissism is destructive. So we certainly want our people to take their work, but not themselves seriously. We do ask that they check their ego at the door as they come into work. We want to remain grounded. By all means, have some confidence. There's a level of confidence that you need when you are going to be public-facing, client-facing. You need to have some sort of trustworthy, credible persona. And I think a bit of confidence does help. But there's just no need for ego.
Travis Schultz, partners, but yourself, very well known in the community for helping those causes in need. Why do you do it? Why do you continue to do it? You're a very busy man, but you continue to give. What do you get out of it? Why do you enjoy it?
Look, the charity thing is just something I've always enjoyed. It's not something that you look to promote. It's really just about giving back. I feel that we, and I don't just mean professional services, we in business have an obligation, a moral responsibility to support the community that supports us. I hate seeing these corporate tech giants and others coming in and profiteering off a community and giving nothing back. And not a dollar, not a sponsorship to a local, not a cent. And just thinking, what can I take from that community? To me, that just doesn't resonate. I think that, we, particularly in relatively small communities like the Sunshine Coast where we are, and the same goes in other communities that we're in. We're in Brisbane, Gold Coast, Cairns. I think that any professional services firm and any business has an obligation to do what it reasonably can to support the community, the neighbourhood, and the people that support it.
And a lot of the times you're behind the mic, you are an amazing communicator, and it sounds like it was a gift or it was with you at least at an early age. But earlier you told me you're an introvert. How does that work? Someone who's on stage in front of people but introverted perhaps.
Oh, look, it's one of those things that I think you have to learn. You're never comfortable when you're an introvert being public facing. I do like my quiet time. I like to be alone on a bike or in the bush or whatever. Us introverts are a bit like that. I don't necessarily look to be in big crowds all the time. But you just learn to cope. The speaking side of things, I don't know. It's just something that I guess I've been capable of doing, and so you just do what you can do. And over time, you become less uncomfortable with it to the point where these days, of course, it doesn't worry me at all. That's certainly my early years. Yeah, no matter whether you had a natural ability to do it or not, you didn't feel comfortable.
How do you juggle all these events and all these things, all the things in life, family, business, community? They're big buckets of yours. How do you juggle that?
It's never easy, and you've got to find efficiencies in life, in work, in all that you do, and you've got to prioritise. And I was on a panel last week of young lawyers, early career lawyers in Brisbane, and that was one of the questions I got actually from the floor. Was, well, how do you balance, and what do we as young lawyers need to be aware of? And I'll share what I told them, and that is that we really have 3 different buckets. Call them wine glasses, if you will. You've got yourself, you've got family and friends, and you've got your work. And we need to realise that if you want to overfill one of these buckets, it's got to come from one of the other 2. And there's a price to pay if you drain that bucket. And I've been guilty of it. If you try and put 140% into your work bucket, then something's going to give. It's going to be you. It's going to be family and friends. And I'm guilty. Throughout my career, there have been times where I have just been so committed to what I'm trying to achieve in the work, in the profession, in the business, in the practice, that things I had to give elsewhere. And I look back now and go, oh shit, that did have an impact, didn't it? I haven't seen those schoolmates now for a year. How did the time go? And as I said to the young lawyers, you've just got to find a way to balance that. My advice was try and sit them at 85% all the time if you can.
Do you feel like you're reaching that 85% mark yourself these days, or?
Oh, I'm far from perfect, Tom. Look, I've looked for ways to try and improve that. Because I just do too much. There's always a difficulty with those the self, family, friends buckets. There's always a tension there. I'm mindful of doing my best to move back across in those directions, and I've made some conscious decisions and plans. It's improving. It's never going to be perfect, but just be mindful of it is all I'd say.
Wine. Why? Where's the love of wine come from? And it's integrated in all that you do almost now. But why do you love wine so much?
It's integrated in, well, some of what I do. It's not that we sort of pour on the cornflakes and take the edge off the day, Tom.
Sounded bad, didn't it?
No, we do a lot of wine events for charity. That's true. And look, it's just something I fell into when I was 21, 22, because some of my older colleagues were talking about wine. I thought, this is interesting. And I had a wine or two, but never really appreciated it. And I thought I might start collecting a bit. And I bought a little steel wine rack from Freedom, which was about a 12 or 15 bottle rack and made of stainless steel, and put it there. And through the Queensland summer, I'd go and had not much money. I'd buy cheap, shitty wine, put it in my steel rack, thinking I'm developing a collection at 21. This is great. And then I kept it there and thought, all right, 2 years on, let's go and try this and see what it's like. It was terrible. It was worse after 2 years. I'm sure it would have been if I'd drunk it straight away, but it was cheap rubbish. But it got me thinking. And yeah, I really want to learn more about why these variations between the same varietal from different regions and terroir. And anyway, over time, my interest grew. I was asked to be a restaurant reviewer about 20 plus years ago. I did that for a while. And then when Ashton was born, it got too hard. And the paper then, I said, well, why don't you just become our wine writer if you're finding this restaurant stuff too hard to do? And that's really where I guess it accelerated from there. And because of the industry connections you build when you're writing wine all the time, just for shits and giggles, I was able to use those connections to leverage into doing things for charity and community. And everyone loves to go to a wine lunch. When you go to a winemaker there talking wine, and people are having a few too many, and people then like to loosen the purse strings a little bit, open the wallet and spend on auction items and charity stuff. And it's great for the charity. People have a great time, and it's a connector. And to me, it's just something I've become more passionate about. But it's got so many other opportunities that come with it that can benefit the broader community when you marry it to a charitable cause.
Is there one bottle of wine somewhere in the world that someone should buy Travis Schultz?
My tastes change, and it's funny. I went off Cabernet about 3 years ago. I just thought, why am I drinking this shit? I'm not liking this anymore. I used to love Cabernet. Barossa Shiraz. I used to love Barossa Shiraz. And in recent years, I'm going, why am I not wanting to crack that bottle of Rockford? So at the moment, I'm loving the Burgundian styles more than anything. I've got friends who have got different passions. I have one particular friend who just loves the Chardonnay from Burgundy. And so that's probably opened my eyes a little bit there as well. I have another friend who spends a lot of time in the Napa Valley and in California. And he's sort of opened my eyes to some of those as well. So yeah, it changes. Pinot Noir, Chardonnay at the moment. And if I had to say one particular wine, I probably shouldn't say I'd go to France because that would be un-Australian, I guess. Probably the Gioconda, Rick Kinsborough Chardonnay that comes out of Beechworth in Victoria.
Very nice. And so what's the dream for Travis Schultz? Can be a retirement dream or 10 years from now. I'm not sure when it might be, but do you own a vineyard? Do you have a wine out there with your face on it? Or
No, I have collaborated with winemakers in the past. I've got one actually at the moment. Good mate John Eastham has got a vineyard called Mayfield, and he's been kind enough to let me play with his best fruit. And we've overdone this Chardonnay with the best new French oak and full malolactic fermentation. And we've just given it the best of everything. And it was bottled on the 11th of February. So it will sit for a little bit. Called Silhouettes. And it's a super premium Chardonnay from the blocks that produced their Chardonnay that won gold at the Royal Melbourne Wine Show 2 years ago. So it looks exceptional. Silhouettes, it's called. It's obviously going to be small batch, and it'll be very limited, but that's my passion project at the moment. I'm very grateful to my friend John for letting me play with his fruit from his vineyard. And it's got a lot of meaning behind it for me, the silhouettes.
Amazing. Last question. We'll wrap up. You're a busy man, so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate all you do, not just coming in here, but for the community. We're so lucky to have you here on the Sunshine Coast. Don't move away. Where is Travis Schultz at most peace?
Oh, look, if I'm honest, when I'm in waders walking through the streams in central Otago, looking for that dark brown shape on the rocky bed of that flowing creek with a fly fishing rod and trying to beguile a trout to think that this piece of artificial plastic is a nymph or a fly. I just love it, fly fishing.
Great answer. I didn't know that about you. There you go. Thank you so much, Travis, for joining me.
And thanks for your kindness, mate. You've had a lot of nice things to say, far too charitable. You probably over-egged the pudding a little bit, but I appreciate all those nice things you've said. Thanks, Tom, for having me.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching the show. This podcast is truly a passion project for me and the small but awesome team behind the scenes. We pour our hearts into bringing you these honest and insightful conversations, but I can't tell you how much it helps when you hit that follow or subscribe button. The show gets bigger, which means we can expand the production and we can continue to bring in amazing guests from all walks of life. Please help us to do this thing that we love and hit that follow or subscribe button. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.